Hi, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. In Ephesians chapter 5, Paul tells the Christians in Ephesus to be imitators of God as dear children. Now, certainly children are trusting and loving toward their parents as their parents take care of them. And that certainly is true regarding our God and Father. But how is it that we're to be imitators of God? Well, if we continue reading in Ephesians chapter 5, Paul gives us some instructions as to what that means and looks like day to day. So first of all, being an imitator of God means walking in love. In verse 2 of chapter 5, he says to walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Paul often uses the illustration of walking to describe the Christian life. Walking means living. And here in this passage, he says that we're to walk in love. Now, there's a lot of confusion today about love. Love, though, as the Bible expresses it, is self-giving. And that's the quality of love that is most clearly noticed in Jesus. And that's what he says in the latter part of verse 2. Walking in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. So he's our example that we're to be self-giving. Whatever selfish desires and attitudes that I have in my life, in my heart, I'm supposed to surrender those and seek to live a life that reflects God and seeks to accomplish his purposes in the world. I do that by serving him and by serving others. Being a Christian is very much about being a servant that is motivated by love. So we're to walk in love. That's how we imitate God. The love of God is most clearly noticed in how he gave us his Son for our salvation. Secondly, if we're to be imitators of God, we're to live a moral life. In verses 3 to 5, Paul says, "But sexual immorality and all impurity or covetousness must not be named among you, as is proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetousness, that is, an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God." As Christians, how we live matters. Our standard of morality, our standard of ethics matters. That standard has been determined for us as a result of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The resurrection of Jesus Christ demands new life, a new way of living, a new quality of life. And Paul warns that if we're going to be immoral, if we're going to live a life that is driven by lustful desires, by selfish desires, then we will have no inheritance in the kingdom. So there's consequence for how we choose to live. If we're going to be an imitator of God, then we are going to have to reflect morality. We're supposed to reflect purity and holiness because God is holy and pure. Which brings us to the third point that Paul makes in verses 6 and 7. Being an imitator of God means being different. He says to let no one deceive you with empty words. For because of these things, the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partners with them. Those who live according to their lustful impulses and according to pride will try to present their life as a life that is fulfilling, that it's a good life. And that can be very challenging for us to recognize. We can be deceived into thinking that that's how we find fulfillment, that that's what our purpose in life is to live for ourselves and our own desires. Paul says, don't allow the world to deceive you with that kind of teaching. Ultimately, those who live for themselves will suffer the wrath of God. So don't be partners with them. Certainly we're to seek to influence the world. Our quality of life, living a moral life, is not to be done just to show the world that we're better than everyone else. Not at all. Just the opposite. The quality of life that we project is supposed to be motivated by love for those who are lost in sin so that they might be attracted to becoming an imitator of God by obedience to Christ. So we have to be different. Our influence in the kingdom depends upon it. And lastly, being an imitator of God means walking as children of light. In verse 8, Paul says, "For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the world. Walk as children of light." So there was a time when we lived in the darkness of sin, but that all changed as we came into the light of the Son of God and obeyed him. He says, you're children of light, walk as children of light. Light comes from God. The first recorded words of God in the Bible are, let there be light, which was looking forward in time ultimately to when Jesus would be sent into the world, who is the light of the world. As we obey him, we become children of light. We are supposed to be reflecting the bright glory of God, leading back to his home. So, how we live matters and is consequential. That's how we're to be imitators of God, by reflecting his light into the hearts and minds of those who are living in the darkness of sin. So being an imitator of God is quite a challenge that is brought before us here in Ephesians chapter 5. But it's possible, by the grace of God and through our faith, that we can be imitators of God and successfully accomplish his purposes in our lives and in the lives of other people. So thank you for watching today. I hope this video has been helpful and encouraging to you as you give thought to your life as a child of God. Thank you and have a nice day.